Hello again. Uh, as promised, I'm going to show you how to use Lightwave to help you with Test Drive Unlimited modding. It should make things a little bit easier and probably a bit quicker. So we'll get started. The thing that one of the only things that we're going to be using is the layers. I remember in one of the other videos I did briefly explain about layers, but I'll quickly go over it again. You've got at the top up here in the right, you've got 10 layers. Each one has a foreground and a background. If you want to select more than one layer, as with anything else, if you hold shift you can add selections to it, and it's the same for background layers as well. You have, like I said, you have 10 layers, and then you have 99 pages, which works out as 990 layers, which is pretty much enough for anyone. You should never really need anything more than that ever. Luckily, most of these Forza cars are only about 150 layers, something like that, so it shouldn't be too bad. Right, we'll get started. As you're using Forza cars, I'm gonna use one as well. It was just the first one I grabbed. It was fairly random. So here it is. It's the Alpha 155. Now, as you notice, there's a whole heap of mess going on at the back and at the sides, and also at the front. That's just because it's got lots of different body kits. When you building your mod, you'll need to choose which body kit that you want to use, unless you're doing something like a GT version of a car. You'll never need to use the race kit. But in this example, I'm not going to use any of them. In fact, I'm not going to use most of the car model. It's just for simplicity, but you apply exactly the same process to the entire model. Right, the thing that we will be using the most is the layers panel, which you can find up here in the layers tab. And here you've got the two options, which is layers panel and layers settings. You only really need layers panel because you can call up layer settings directly from the panel. So here it is. Ignore that one. That's just, in fact, I'll close that. We don't need that. So here we have it. If we open that up, you can see we've got all the different layers. In fact, we've got 139 of them. If you have a look here at the bottom, we've got things like wing race, wing race, wing race. That's for the rear spoiler. You've also got the same for side skirts, things like this. So you got skirt A. I'll show you there. We've got skirt A, skirt B, skirt C. But like I said, for a lot of this, I'm not going to use most of this. So what I shall do is I'll switch over to layer 2, which is the main body. I'll change the view a little bit so it makes it easier. Now the idea is, with the layers, it works exactly the same as Photoshop really. You can have everything just on one layer, or you can have different elements split across several layers, and then you can group them together, which is the part that we need. It's the grouping. The way it actually works is you parent one item to another. Parenting works pretty much like it would sound. One object acts as a parent and the other objects act as children. So if you think of it as like a dad holding his child's hand, wherever the dad goes, he'll also take the child with him, because they're attached. If you was to have several items all in a chain, so for example you'd have, and it's one of the biggest ones that you'll use, is you'll have the main car body is the parent, you'll have the car door, which will be a child, but then you've also got the door glass, which is a secondary child. So if you think of that as like a dad holding a little boy's hand who's holding his sister's hand, wherever the dad goes, you'll take the boy with him, wherever the boy goes, you'll take the girl with him, because they're holding each other's hands. But if the boy decides to walk in a different direction, the girl will still go with him, because they're still holding hands. Right, now the main thing you want to do with a Forza model, because as you can see there's 139 layers and you don't want anything near that. That's way too much stuff for the game to try and deal with. Ideally you want to crunch everything down to as few layers as possible. Generally you'll only need about 10 layers, 10 to 12 layers, something like that. And those layers will be split up into just the different parts that actually move or rotate. So it'll be things like the main car body, the door, the glass for the door, the trunk, the hood, the front bumper, the rear bumper, things like that. They're all separate parts which can move or come off or get damaged, but you don't want things like the floor to be a separate object to the main car, because them two never separate from each other. Same with the lights. Although the lights turn on and off and things like that, the lights don't actually move anywhere separately to the car, so they can all be put on the same layer as the car. So we'll do that with a few parts to start off with. So we'll select the parts of the undercarriage, the body, other parts of the body, frame, that's like the interior of the trunk and things like that. What's that one? Oh yeah, we'll use that. Those will do. So I'll switch over to polygon mode as well. So we can cut those, paste all that onto layer 1. What else have we got? Rubber trim. Yeah, we'll take that as well. And I'll just deselect these. I'm doing this a bit rough, just purely for ease. So I'll paste that down, and essentially I'm going to get rid of everything else, because you can see this work perfectly fine without needing all the other objects on there. Like I said, you just apply it. Actually, one other thing that I will use is the undercarriage as well, because it looks weird without having one of them in there. So cut that, also paste that to the base layer, and then if you notice up here you've got an F and a B, that's foreground and background. If you click the first tick box, it'll show everything in the foreground. You're not selecting, it's only viewing. Or if you click the first one in the backgrounds, anything that's not in the foreground will be shown in the background. So that's quite handy. But what we will do is select all of them, view all of them, unview layer 1 and delete everything else. Right, so we got a very basic setup there. So what we want to do to start separating the model is select the door and the door handle, and then I'll do select all connected polygons, which was right square bracket, and then I'll also select those bits as well because they're part of the door, and then I'll cut those. Well, missed a little bit at the bottom there, so I'll do select connected, remove those. Right, cut those, paste it onto a second layer. So you got your left and right doors. Now I always prefer to work left first, right second, just because generally you normally say left and right, not right and left. So I'll cut the right hand door, paste that onto layer 3, and we don't actually have door glass in this model, that's part of the cockpit model. So I'm going to very quickly just make a window. Change the view to make it a little bit easier there. I'll go over to the create menu and I'll choose pen. You don't need to worry about this, it's not really much of an issue for you because you'll be working, and I've screwed that up. Right, so I'll move that there, and then we'll go over to there. No, that's not working. Okay, I'll do it the easy way. That one there, that one there, that one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. Okay. That's also not rotated, or it's not fitting properly, so I'll just do that. It's not amazing, but it will do the job. It's also pointing the wrong direction, so while the polygon's selected still, I'll press F to flip, and that is a window. And then I'll move that out of the way. I want to make a duplicate of that, but mirrored for the other side. So I'll do Shift and V, which is mirror, and just click on the center line. That has created a second one. You shouldn't have to do this, I'm just doing it because I haven't got the parts available. So we got the second window, I'll cut that and paste it onto another layer. So we've got the main car body. Hang on, I'll change the view again. Main car body, left door, right door, left window and right window. So what we'll do in the layers panel, in the first one, you'll rename that to something sensible like car body. Click with enter. Then we'll do left door, right door, left window and right window. Now the names aren't really important, they don't affect how the grouping works, it's just for ease of access really. Right, so we go back to the left door, and under the parent drop down we want car body, which is the first one. So that means that this door is now joined to the car, but it's still classed as a separate object. We'll do the same for the right door. We'll parent that to the car body. The left window, we don't want to parent that to the car, we want to parent that to the door. As I said before, the left door is like the little boy, the window is the little girl. So we'll select that and parent it to left door, and we'll select the right hand window and parent that to the right hand door. Like I said, the names aren't important. As you can see, the left door is parented to the car body, which says it's layer number 1. If you was to change the name of the layer to something like donkey, and then you call up that, the name's automatically changed, but it still says it's layer 1. That's the only important part. That just tells you what layer it's actually parented to. So we change that back to car body. I only did that just to show you. Right. That is essentially done. Everything that you can see on this layer is one object. Everything that you can see here is another object, but it's connected to the layer 1, and everything that you can see on this layer is one object, but it's connected to layer 2, which is the left door. That is essentially grouping. We've got, and I'll call up the layers panel again. Although it doesn't look like anything's grouped here, they are, we know that, because when you click on it, it comes up and you can see it. So it's right door is parented to car body, right window is parented to right door. So it's just a case of doing that for everything else. It's like, as I said, get everything down to as few layers as possible. Like you got the door handle here, that doesn't animate, so it doesn't need to go on a separate layer. It can go on the same as the door. Things like the lights, they don't move anywhere, so you'd cut them to cut and paste them to layer 1 as well. It's just things like the trunk, the trunk exterior and the trunk interior. You'd cut and paste both of those onto one layer, and then you'd parent that to the car. That's essentially it. That's all you really need to do, and it'll work out perfectly fine. So what we shall do is save that like so, and I'll call up SAP. I actually refer to it as Deep Exploration, but that's purely because up until version 6.5 it was called Deep Exploration, and then when it got to version 7, by the time it got to version 7, they'd sold it to a different company that thought it'd be a great idea to rename it. Don't really see why. So if we load it up, you can see we got the car body, the door and the windows, and over here, if you have a look, we've got the main group, which is car body. Underneath it you've got two groups, left door and right door, and in that group you can see we got left window, and if you have a look, there's a little line that joins left window to left door, and the same with the right window, that joins to the right door, but then both right door and left door join up to the main car body. So that's your dad, your little girl, dad, little boy, and then a little girl. Now I'll show you what I mean by parenting. We've selected just the car, and I'll move it around, and I'll move the car, and the doors and the windows move with it as well, which is fine. If we select just the door and move that, the door and the glass move, but the car stays still. And if I select the window, just the window moves. So that means that your grouping's okay, that's perfectly fine. You don't actually need to do anything in this program other than load the object in and resave it as a different object. Now, I know on the forum I said you wanted to use OBJ. In most occasions you do, because most objects that people will mess about with are just one object, but in this case we have a hierarchy, which is this. It's the same as a skeleton. You have the neck, the head connects to the neck connects to the spine, and the spine eventually connects to the hips. So that's your hierarchy. But all we really need to do is just resave it out. OBJ is normally okay, and you get a lot more information in the OBJ format. But for some reason, it doesn't like grouping or hierarchies. I don't know why. So you can't really use it for that. If you try saving as an OBJ and then you load it back in, actually I'll show you. Save as wavefront object, save, and if we load in the OBJ, the hierarchy is destroyed. Everything is a single layer. So if you was to move the car body, the doors stay where they are, they don't do anything. So that's no good to us. So we'll go back and load the lightwave object. No, I don't want to save that again. So instead we're going to save out as 3DS. 3DS isn't the best format in the world. It does have its limitations, but it keeps the hierarchy, which is a very good thing. So we'll save that out. If you call up the 3DS, you can see, there we go, we've still got our hierarchy. There, like I said, there are some limitations, things like naming. It only allows a certain amount of letters for the name. I don't know why. It's just a very old format, and back in the old days you had them certain limitations on computers, so they never really bothered changing it. So there you have it. You have a format which you can load into Zmodeler because it can handle 3DS, and you have your grouping hierarchy still in place. You don't have to worry about things like texturing. You could texture if you wanted, like we got some of the things here, but you'll do the texturing in Zmodeler. There are a few other things to have a quick look at. If you happen to load if you happen to have your object and it's not pointing in the right direction, for example, you find the car's pointing up at the nose of the car's pointing up in the air. If you go to settings and then to geometry transform, enable pre-save transformations, you could tell it to rotate it by 90 degrees. So you save it and it would come out looking right. I'll show you. But as it's already pointing right at the moment, if we load in the 3DS, it's still pointing okay. That's weird. Okay. But it should generally rotate it. I don't know why it hasn't in this case, but I actually use that a lot because all my Forza cars are pointing in the wrong direction. So like when I loaded mine into when I put mine into Lightwave, I'd already rotated it to the correct direction, so you didn't actually see me do that. But that is essentially all you have to do. Is in Lightwave, reduce it down to as few layers as possible, and then assign your parent in, and then save it and load it into this, and just save it as a 3DS, and then you can pull it into Zmodeler. Regarding the layers, like you saw me do it, I started with the car first, then I'd done the door, and then I'd done the window. You don't actually have to do it in that order. As long as you got the objects on the separate layers, when it comes to the panel, you could start with the right window and straight away say parent that to the right door, and then you could parent the right door to the car. As long as you actually put the grouping in there in the right order. And what I mean by that is car body is the base layer, other things are above that, but you could quite easily have it as the left door. Hang on, I'll just move that to there. So we have that one, which, like I said, the layer name doesn't matter. It still thinks that, because you're not naming objects, you're naming the actual layer itself. So it still thinks that this layer is called layer window, but it's not. It's the layer door. It's the left door, sorry. But the important part is the number that it's parented to. So this layer is parented to layer 2, which is now wrong because the two objects are on opposite layers. So this would be parented to car body, and then the window would be parented to 1, 2, 3, 4 to left window, which is that. So that, it thinks that's called left window, and it thinks that's called left door now, but that one is still parented to that one, and then that one is still parented to that one. So the hierarchy still works. It's still set up exactly the same way, despite the layers being in a different order. It really doesn't matter. But generally, if you're going to do it, you do the car body, the door, and then the window, just for simplicity, so it all makes sense. But other than that, you don't need to worry about much. The hardest part is copying, or rather cutting things from one layer to another. Just use a mixture of normal select, like holding left mouse button and dragging it over things, and then doing select all connected, which was the right square bracket, the one just next to the enter key, and that will select all those parts, and then you can cut that and paste it to whichever layer you need it to. But other than that, that's all you need to do. It's quite simple. The only reason I say do it in Lightwave is, like I explained in that thread, comparing Zmodeler to Lightwave is like comparing MS Paint to Photoshop. They can both draw pictures, but the commands in MS Paint are rather basic. It's things like select. You can only select a square shape. If you draw with a pen, you can only draw in different thicknesses. In Photoshop, you can select, and you can use the lasso tool, so you could sort of select in a big wiggly shape. The pen tool, it could either be a hard pen or it could be a soft pen, so you get nice gentle faded edges. Yeah, it just makes trying to do things a little bit easier. And it's the same with Zmodeler. While technically it is a 3D program because you can load in 3D objects and you can manipulate them, you can't do anything. You can't do any major geometry modifications, whereas Lightwave you can, or any of the other big name 3D programs you can. So it's just the fact that the tools are slightly more advanced and you have more tools to play with, that it makes it a little bit easier. But you could do it all in Zmodeler. It's just a bit of a pain in the arse, really. But like I said, that's essentially it. If you have any questions, then don't email me. No, I'm joking. If you have any questions, send me a PM or post it in one of the threads, something like that, and I'll try and answer it as best as I can for you. Good luck, have a crack at that, and hopefully we'll see a mod coming from you quite soon. Have fun. Bye.